$21 billion has quietly disappeared from America's balance sheet. In March 2025 alone, the United States experienced a 14% plunge in foreign visitors, a collapse large enough to wipe out an entire year's worth of tourism exports. Stroll through JFK or LAX today, and you'll hear the sound of suitcase wheels echoing off empty terminals. Over the past 12 months, 10 international airlines have already pulled the plug on U.S. routes, eliminating the very pipelines that used to send millions of travelers into hotel lobbies, airport shuttles, and Main Street cafes. Here's the hard truth. Every 1% drop in travelers drains another $1.8 billion from the U.S. economy. And with that comes new waves of layoffs hitting tour guides, restaurants, and ride-share drivers in cities big and small. Stick with me, because by the end of this report, you'll understand why even aviation giants like Qatar Airways, Lufthansa, and Singapore Airlines have quietly started removing America from their booking lists. Why is this happening? It's a triple hit. Tariffs jacking up costs, border security red tape choking arrivals, and a growing sense of insecurity, turning what was once a dream trip into a maybe-later destination. This isn't just minor turbulence. It's a sharp nosedive toward industry collapse. Let's break it down further. That $21 billion shortfall widens when you shift your eyes north across the Atlantic. Take Play Airlines, Iceland's last budget carrier flying to the U.S. They just announced they're pulling out for good. New York flights stop on September 1st. Boston goes dark on September 15th. Baltimore, Washington vanishes by October 24th. When Play revealed this exit plan, it triggered what looked like a mass evacuation of travelers. Within just 30 days, arrivals from northwestern Europe collapsed by 17%, marking the first double-digit fall since tourism rebounded after the pandemic. A top hotel CEO told Bloomberg that U.S. bookings from Europe this summer are already down 25%, even as the same hotel chain reports rising reservations in places like Toronto and Barcelona. In simple terms, hotels abroad are filling up while Las Vegas hotel suites sit empty. Ask any airline analyst, and they'll admit the numbers just don't work anymore. Tariffs inflate the cost of spare parts. Border delays add hours of frustration. And a viral video of TSA chaos can kill demand overnight, faster than a snowstorm at O'Hare. For airlines like Play, the financial math is ruthless. A single-aisle jet carrying 180 leisure passengers needs about 85% of its seats sold just to break even on the 6-hour jump to Stewart Airport. Miss that target by just 5 rows, and the route starts burning cash. With traveler sentiment shaky, the gap between full and empty flights has become a financial canyon. So, Play's accountants called it quits, shifting their jets to shorter, tax-friendly routes inside Europe. But this isn't just about airlines. The ripple effects slam into U.S. cities and towns. Each lost European visitor takes about $1,800 in spending off the table, from rideshare tips to Broadway tickets, and cuts jobs in hotel kitchens already scrambling to hire. Now, Wall Street analysts are warning about tourism contagion spreading from coastal cities to the Midwest and beyond as flight routes disappear. Would you still sit and coach for 10 hours only to stand in a 2-hour immigration line? Look north again, and the alarm bells get louder. After Washington announced its new tariffs in March, bookings for Canada to U.S. flights collapsed by over 70%, and they've stayed down month after month through September 2025, according to data from OAG. Airlines responded with the equivalent of a chainsaw. Between April and October, they removed a massive 320,000 seats from the U.S.-Canada route map. That's like grounding 8 jumbo jets every single day. And those seats? They didn't just disappear, they got rerouted. WestJet is now adding more flights to Dublin and Edinburgh, and Air Canada is shifting focus to Spain and Caribbean sunseekers. Hotel CEOs across the United States are sounding the alarm during earnings calls. Rooms that used to be packed with Canadian travelers, passports stamped with maple leaves, are now sitting empty. This is happening even as hotels in other parts of the country are charging record-breaking rates. The shift in consumer behavior is hitting hard. A Longwoods International survey from May found that 6 out of 10 Canadians say they're less likely to visit the U.S. this year. Their reasons? Long waits at the border, rising concerns over gun violence, and the heavy tension of the ongoing trade war. It's the older tourists, especially those over 50, who are the first to change their plans. Many of them tell researchers that visiting the US no longer feels worth the stress. Instead, they're spending their travel money on the beaches of Mexico or speeding through Japan on bullet trains. This shift has real consequences. Each Canadian family that decides to stay away takes about $1,800 out of local U.S. economies. And this loss doesn't stop there. Tourism analysts warn it triggers a chain reaction, affecting everything from restaurants and car rental companies to Broadway shows. Think about the domino effect. When an airline cancels a route, the TSA cuts back staff hours. Airport shops close earlier. Taxi lines at terminals shrink. What once seemed like a theoretical trade war impact is now reality. You can literally see it in the empty seats of a Porter Airlines turboprop grounded at Toronto's waterfront. If you're watching this from Toronto or Vancouver, drop a comment below. What's stopping you from crossing the US border this summer? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And it's not just Canadian tourists. European airlines are shifting too, quietly moving planes and profits away from America. On April 29, 2025, Lufthansa CEO Carsten Spohr announced the company is cutting its fourth quarter capacity growth to the U.S. from 6% to 3%. Why, you ask? Spohr blamed the decision directly on Trump-era tariffs, saying they've eaten away at demand. But those empty airplane seats won't go to waste. According to an April 1, 2025 internal memo, Lufthansa is now boosting its Frankfurt flights to Seoul and Shanghai, using the fuel-efficient Airbus A350-900, a clear shift toward Asia's strong business travel market. Other airlines are following the same playbook. A Financial Times report in late May revealed that Air France-KLM's bookings for the critical May-June travel window fell by 2.4%. As a result, they're pulling back Boeing's 777 flights from the U.S. and redeploying them to Tokyo and Singapore instead. British Airways is cutting back even harder, and this time it's hitting New York directly. Due to ongoing engine shortages, the airline has been forced to suspend its Gatwick to New York route from December 12, 2024, all the way through March 25, 2025. That's not just a scheduling tweak, it's a major blow to transatlantic travel during the busiest time of the year. Over 100 flights have been wiped off the map, flights that normally would have been packed with holiday travelers spending big in the U.S. So what is British Airways doing instead? They're reassigning crews and aircraft to higher-yield markets, routes in Asia and the Gulf, where profits are currently stronger and demand is booming. But this isn't just about shifting planes. Every wide-body jet rerouted to Asia leaves a bigger revenue hole in the U.S. economy. To put it in perspective, a single Frankfurt to Seoul flight can bring in around $80,000 in daily ticket sales. That's money that used to flow into New York's hotels, rideshare apps, Times Square restaurants, and Broadway shows. Now, it's going to Seoul's Gangnam district, filling cafes and luxury stores instead of New York cash registers. Analysts at Bernstein warn that if Europe's top airlines continue steering their operations east, the U.S. could lose up to 1 million high-spending international visitors per year. That's not just a tourism problem. It's an economic warning. Losing that much inbound travel could erase an estimated $1.88 billion from local U.S. economies, many of which are already flashing early layoff signals in the service sector. And it's not just British Airways making changes. The Pacific market tells an even harsher story. On October 24, 2025, Jetstar will operate its final Sydney to Honolulu flight, shutting down a route that's been a crucial air bridge for 19 years. With that move, Jetstar will have fully exited U.S. airspace, leaving a major gap in Australia to America tourism. For Hawaii's hotel industry, this is a painful loss. They had relied on nearly 270 Australian tourists per Jetstar flight, each one representing room bookings, restaurant spending, and tours around the islands. But those Boeing 787s are now being reassigned to Seoul and Bangkok, cities that offer lower airport fees and where nobody is grumbling about trade war surcharges at check-in counters. It's simply a more profitable pivot for the airline. And Jetstar isn't shy about this shift. Their June 17, 2025 schedule update introduced 10 new weekly round trips between Sydney and Seoul, creating an additional 100,000 seats per year. These flights are aimed squarely at K-pop fans, cosmetic shoppers, and the growing wave of Australians chasing duty-free deals in South Korea. This isn't just a theory. The demand is real and measurable. According to Skyscanner's Horizons 2025 report, Searches for Seoul from Australian IP addresses skyrocketed by 47% year over year, making it the fastest growing long-haul destination for Australians. So what happened to the Aloha spirit? Travel agents are pointing to a two-front price war that's driving tourists away from the US. First, jet fuel prices have surged, partly due to Washington's 50% copper tariffs, which have inflated supply chain costs across aviation. Second, the stronger US dollar has led to higher hotel surcharges, making stays in Hawaii and the mainland US far more expensive than they used to be. For many Australian families, the math no longer makes sense. The once coveted Hawaii vacation now costs about the same as 2 weeks in Busan or Phuket, and travelers can skip the hassle of America's border paperwork and visa restrictions in the process. And they're not alone in this thinking. Singapore Airlines has seen the same data and is making similar adjustments, focusing more on routes where demand is rising and costs are lower. In April 2025, the global airline industry quietly hit a turning point. A major carrier removed its Singapore-Seattle Fifth Freedom route, a service that once allowed it to transport passengers between two countries outside its home base. Alongside that, it also scrapped its Manchester-Houston link, a move that caught many industry watchers by surprise. But this isn't just about route changes. It signals something bigger. The world's most profitable business travelers, those coveted high-yield corporate flyers, are now shifting east of the international dateline. The focus is moving away from U.S. hubs toward Asia-Pacific destinations, where demand remains strong. Behind the scenes, airline executives whisper about the soaring cost of operating in the United States. From airport fees to baggage handling, costs are climbing. So, airlines are adjusting. They're now redeploying their fuel-efficient A350 jets to shorter regional flights, like quick 4-hour hops to Ho Chi Minh City. These flights burn half the fuel compared to longer trans-Pacific routes, but still generate healthy profits. In today's market, that's an irresistible combination. Unfortunately, these strategic shifts are causing collateral damage across U.S. airports. At Honolulu International, airport officials have already warned concession stand operators to brace for a 12% drop in sales this winter. Fewer tourists mean fewer passengers buying snacks, souvenirs, or duty-free goods. Over in Seattle-Tacoma, customs officers are now being reassigned to Miami, where Latin American arrivals are holding steady despite the broader slowdown. It's a clear sign that traffic patterns are changing. And on the ground in Los Angeles, Uber drivers are feeling the pinch too. Some report waiting up to 40 minutes between airport ride requests, nearly twice the wait time compared to last summer. The message is simple. Tariffs, shifting trade policies, and traveler uncertainty are forcing airlines to redraw the Pacific Jetstream. At the end of the day, airlines will always follow the money. And right now, the most profitable path runs through places like Incheon's duty-free stores, not through the jetways of LAX. So when you're planning your next big trip, you might have a new decision to make. Do you want a Tokyo sushi train experience or a Los Angeles taco truck stop? Meanwhile, in the United States, the domestic airline map is shrinking fast, maybe even faster than the tourists who once filled those seats. Look at JetBlue, for example. After suffering 3 straight quarters of financial losses, the airline has already exited 15 cities and eliminated more than 50 routes to stay afloat. As a result, whole regions in the Southeast and Midwest are now completely without JetBlue service. Not a single blue-tail jet left on the departures board. And it's not just JetBlue making cuts. United Airlines is using the same playbook. On April 15, 2025, United announced it would reduce its domestic capacity by 4% starting in the third quarter. That means 21 older planes will be retired early, sent to storage or scrap. But United isn't disappearing. It's pivoting to more profitable international routes. Executives say that the seats they're removing from cities like Cleveland and Denver will instead be reallocated to premium transatlantic flights to places like Paris and Sao Paulo. Why? Because travelers on these routes still pay top dollar for lie-flat beds and luxury service, something that domestic flyers rarely do. And here's the thing, this isn't just happening at the big-name airports. The casualties are spreading to smaller regional hubs too, leaving travelers and local economies scrambling to adjust. In May, the White House unveiled its latest budget proposal, and one cut in particular sent shockwaves through small-town America. The plan slices $38 million from the Essential Air Service Program, a small but vital federal initiative. That may sound like a minor number in Washington's multi-trillion-dollar budget talks, but for dozens of rural communities, it could mean the difference between staying connected to the world or being cut off completely. This program, which helps fund flights to and from remote towns, stretching from Montana's wide-open plains to the rivers of Mississippi, has been a lifeline for decades. Without it, these towns don't just lose convenience, they lose access to the outside world. Airport directors across the country are sounding the alarm. If Congress allows this cut to survive, dozens of communities could soon watch their final scheduled flights vanish, like a fading runway light blinking out at midnight. For small towns, these aren't luxury flights. They're essential routes that connect isolated regions to medical care, education, and economic opportunities. When major airlines decide a route isn't profitable enough, they usually pull out. In those cases, regional carriers often step in, but only if the federal government covers the cost of operations, especially fuel. Without that support, the price of a ticket from Wolf Point, Montana to Billings could skyrocket from $89 to $400 overnight, if the flight even still exists. For many residents, that's not just expensive, that's impossible. And the fallout doesn't stop at the airport. It's not just about passengers. It's about jobs, livelihoods, and local economies. When air service disappears, so do TSA positions, car rental counters, and airport diners that once served early morning flight crews. Those once busy diners may soon be serving foreclosure notices instead of coffee and eggs. The ripple effect spreads beyond the terminal walls. Farmers lose supply chain access, medical patients lose options for quick treatment in larger cities, and even small colleges struggle to recruit athletes or students from out of state. What seems like a simple budget line change turns into a slow, invisible economic puncture that drains entire towns. Some state governors have promised to step in with emergency grants, but let's be honest, most states are already stretched to the breaking point. Wildfire recovery costs, Medicaid overruns, disaster relief funds, it's all piling up. So the question remains, can any state afford to create a new safety net fast enough before rural runways go completely dark? We'd love to hear what you think. Drop your verdict in the comments, because the next vote on Capitol Hill could literally decide whether your hometown airport gets a boarding call or a padlock. But this isn't just a rural issue. The same pattern is happening across the globe, from the icy skies of northern Europe to the wheat fields of America's Midwest. Airlines are cutting routes, airport gates are going quiet, and America's once mighty $21 billion tourism engine is sputtering right when it should be firing on all cylinders. Trade wars are driving up costs. Every spare part for a plane now carries a tariff. Visa processing times have slowed to a crawl. Security headlines scare off tourists. And slowly but surely, the U.S. is losing its grip on the global travel industry. Already, 10 major airlines have removed their logos from U.S. departure boards, pulling flights and shifting their resources elsewhere. More are considering doing the same. Look around the world and you'll see it happening. Canada's jets are now landing in Dublin. Lufthansa is focusing on Seoul. Jetstar is expanding into Bangkok. Meanwhile, small towns in Montana, Mississippi, and beyond are bracing for the silence of an empty runway. If Washington doesn't take bold action, ending unnecessary trade barriers, streamlining entry processes, and modernizing airport security, the American flight map will keep tearing at the seams. This isn't just about airlines, it's about the country's position on the world stage. But here's the twist: crisis doesn't have to mean collapse. Every runway has two directions, forward or back. With smarter policies, faster visa programs, stress-free terminals, and a modern supply chain, the United States could reclaim its place as the world's #1 travel hub. And that brings us to the million-dollar question. How long will it take for the Stars and Stripes to once again wear the crown of the world's top destination? 5 years? 10? Or has the window already closed? Drop your timeline in the comments, because your opinion is the missing boarding pass in this debate. Let's hear it. Because the future of America's airports might just depend on voices like yours.